Hey guys, this is Austin, and inside this mysterious brown box is what I very much hope is the Xbox One X. But the question is it worth it? So first of all, I have to give a big shout out to Microsoft for actually sending us out the Xbox One X early. Moment of truth. Oh yeah. So first we get all of our paperwork in this nice little folder. So we get the getting started guide. Actually, something cool about the One X is that if you do have a One S right now, literally all the cables are in the same spot and they use the same cable. So you can just unplug the One S, plug the One X in, and it works just fine. You also get 1 month of Xbox Game Pass, as well as what I assume is a month of, 14 days of Xbox Live Gold. We also get, looks to be some cables. So we have the tiny power cable. One of the nice things about the One S and the One X is that you don't need a power brick, you just plug it right in. All right, we also get an HDMI cable, as well as the, controller. I don't think the One X has a different controller than the One S. They already updated it last year with Bluetooth and a couple things, but let's take a look. Yeah, that looks pretty much like a normal Xbox One controller. It does have a little bit of a texture on the back, but I think it's the same as the One S, just in a different color. But nice, although what's not nice is that the $500 console still comes with AA batteries. It's actually not that big of a deal, but having to charge an extra $20 for the battery is kind of annoying. Now, the Xbox One X. So I've actually held one of these before, and it is so heavy. So this is actually slightly smaller than the Xbox One S, but it weighs a lot more. And it's mostly because they put some crazy cooling to actually get this thing to work. There it is, the Xbox One X. So if you look here in the back, it's literally just a giant heatsink. So the idea here is that because this is so much more powerful than something like the Xbox One S, that they need to get a lot more cooling to actually make sure this doesn't explode or catch on fire or red ring. So just like on the One S, we have the power port, HDMI out as well as HDMI in, a pair of USB 3.0 ports, IR out, speaker out, as well as Ethernet. My big takeaways from the One X, as far as hardware goes, it's just so heavy. I'm just gonna keep saying that. This is so heavy. Ken, get over here. Isn't that heavy?
I mean, it's because it's smaller than the One S too, right?
It's very slight. It's basically the same size. It's like a little smaller.
This very dense.
They got vapor chamber cooling inside, which is like what you'd find on like a 1080 Ti or something.
I mean, also this thing probably draws more power too, yet the power core is the same.
I'm actually surprised that they were able to do that because the PS4 Pro uses a more PC style.
Yeah.
Speaking of the PS4 Pro, to me, the One X is a much more attractive console across the board. Not only does it pack more power and a smaller and better looking chassis, but you're also getting extra features such as Ultra HD Blu-ray that you just can't get on the PS4 Pro. Put the One X side by side with its little brother, and the family resemblance is clear. It drops the vents on top in favor of a matte black finish all the way across. While this is nice for usability and allowing you to actually put things on top of the console, to me, I still feel like the One S is the better looking console. Especially in white, it is such a classy look, but the One X is very similar. Like the PS4 Pro, the major advantage of the One X is that it is a more powerful version of the Xbox One S. Look at the specs and it's no competition. While it has a similar 8-core processor, on the One X it's clocked higher at 2.3 GHz compared to 1.7. Memory sees a massive upgrade. We're going from 8 GB of DDR3 to 12 GB of GDDR5. Now having that extra space means that not only can you do things like store higher resolution textures, but it is of the faster GDDR5 variant. The original Xbox One relied on DDR3 memory, which is a lot slower, but it was backed up by some very small and very fast ESRAM on the actual chip itself. Now this was expensive and part of the reason why the original Xbox One did not have as much power as the PS4, which decided to bail on all of that and just go with the faster GDDR5 memory out of the box. And the Xbox One X needs it. So it has an AMD Vega-based GPU with a pretty impressive 6 teraflops of performance. And to put that in perspective, the original Xbox One had about 1.2 teraflops, while the PS4 and PS4 Pro have 1.8 and 4.2 teraflops respectively. That is 5 times the graphics horsepower of the original Xbox One, and it is right up there with a lot of high-end gaming PCs. Now it's actually kind of necessary in 2017. The original Xbox One barely struggled to hit 1080p in a lot of games, much less 4K. The idea is that all current Xbox One games will run right out of the box no problem on the One X, but some games, and especially new ones going forward, should be One X enhanced. Now this can mean different things depending on the game, so a lot of the times this means that you're going to get 4K and HDR support, but at the very least you should see some resolution and quality improvements. As I'm doing this video before the release date, not all of these game patches are live, however a couple of them that I can test are Gears of War 4 and Titanfall 2. Gears is right up there with some of the best looking options on the Xbox One, and you get a ton of options on the One X. Not only does it have a 4K rendering mode with enhanced textures, but you can also opt to play at 1080p at 60 frames, which is awesome. Not all games do this, but it brings the experience closer to the flexibility you get on PC. When you're playing on a nice 4K TV, the difference is very noticeable. Take a closer look and you'll see that not only are textures on his face and jacket much improved, but the high resolution helps clean up stuff like his hair. In action, while the details aren't quite as obvious, the extra resolution and textures make a big difference. It's not a next generation leap or anything, but especially if you have an HDR display, it looks great. Titanfall 2 also shows a substantial difference. This is a game that struggles to get close to HD on standard hardware, but here it's running with a dynamic resolution that aims for 4K while keeping locked to 60 frames per second. In most areas, it's not quite at 4K, but the difference compared to the standard Xbox isn't even close. It goes from being a bit of a blurry mess to looking crisp and detailed. This is all based on playing on a 4K TV, but you will see some of these improvements if you're using a 1080p or even a 1440p monitor. The One X will super sample down to HD to get you a sharper image with the same improved textures, etc. You won't be getting the full benefit, but as 4K and HDR compatible TVs become more and more common, having a more powerful console isn't a crazy idea. Microsoft recently brought out backwards compatibility for original Xbox games, which works well on the X as you'd expect. What's really impressive is the 360 emulation. On the standard one, it looks essentially identical to base 360 hardware, but for some games, including Halo 3 and Fallout 3, there's a special One X rendering mode. Not only does this massively improve the resolution, but it can also add things like HDR support without touching the base game code, or at least supposedly. Take a look at Halo 3, and the difference is kind of incredible. There's a massive leap in not only resolution, but just in sheer detail. If you take a closer look at Arbiter here, for example, he goes from being a few blurry pixels on the 360 to being razor sharp on the One X. It's clear that they're drawing higher quality textures farther away than was possible before, and the results are awesome. Unfortunately, this won't be the case on every 360 game on the One X, but it is still incredibly impressive. Get outside of gaming and you'll find a very familiar sight. So the new Xbox One interface is shared across all Xbox Ones, and while it is a big improvement, it still is a little bit cluttered compared to what I'd like. PS4. You do get some new options, including being able to record gameplay at up to 4K 60 in HDR, although if you want to record for longer than 30 seconds, you will need an external drive. Also, just a little tip. If you want to know which games take advantage of the One X, there's a drop-down menu which will show you which titles are One X enhanced. The vapor chamber cooling inside the One X absolutely does its job. So while it does get a little bit warmer around back, thankfully that doesn't mean that the fan speed is going to be all that high. It's only just a little bit louder than something like the One S. Given the power draw tops 165 watts, I have to give Microsoft credit. They did not cheap out when it comes to the cooling. Which brings me to one of the biggest issues with the One X: price. At $500, it's not only $100 more than the PS4 Pro, but it's basically double the price of the standard Xbox One. The Xbox is fighting an uphill battle. On one hand, there's the more successful PS4, and on the other is the surprisingly excellent Nintendo Switch. So, is the Xbox One X worth it? Well, it depends. If you're the person who wants the most powerful console out there, then yes. But for a lot of people, the cheaper PS4 Pro is going to deliver not only more games, but the performance is close enough that it might just be enough. So, what do you guys think about the One X? Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you on the next one.